Welcome in, Bronco Nation. Today we're going to be looking at the spring game footage. I want to discuss some strengths and some weaknesses that I was seeing in person, and I want you guys to be able to see what I'm seeing. So I'm going to show you guys the film, and I'm going to break it down for you a little bit. When I was watching in person, I was kind of noticing a distinct lack of run game. And at first, I thought that was kind of due to, a young offensive line. We have some guys missing. There weren't a lot of gaps. But going back and watching this footage, to me, it actually looks like the defense is looking really strong in the defensive line and also the linebackers. The linebackers are where they need to be at almost all times. There weren't many missed tackles, which is very nice to see. That's something we discussed in our last video. One of the things we wanted to see was better tackling. They've been putting a focus on it all spring camp. And coming into this spring game, we wanted to see if that was paying off. And it seems so far that it is. So the linebackers are in position, they're making their tackles, and the defensive line had some really nice moves. Some sheds, some block shedding that they were able to get past guys and get where they needed to be. Even a couple stunts where they were switching positions to get past the linemen. So it was really nice to see. All right, so this first one I want to look at is kind of a successful run play. He's going to hand it off. He gets probably right about 8 yards or so, which is pretty good for a run play. And there's some opportunities and some good successes here on both sides of the ball. So the first thing I want to say is this is one of the few run plays where I saw really good gap creation. We have these two guys, the tight end and the guard, I believe, and they come out and they split. This guy's pushing to the outside. This guy's pushing kind of more inside and opening up a gap right here. We have the tackle starting to move upfield to find a block. Now, right about here, this guy starts to shed his block and get past that guard that at first was doing a pretty good job of creating the gap. The tackle here sees that, turns around, helps to completely block this guy out and let the running back through, kind of completes that gap for the running back. Otherwise, this guy probably would have gotten that tackle. Good teamwork there. And then this guy, who's got a good block, gets shedded, and that guy ends up making the tackle. So, like I said, some good gap creation right off the bat. There's a nice wide gap being created here. And then as that closes in with this guy, the tackle, he kind of sees, if you see, he's looking upfield and he sees, okay, this guy's blocked. This guy's going for his block. This guy is kind of running inside right now, so he's kind of putting himself out of the play a little bit. So that's when he sees this guy starting to shed out of the corner of his eye, turns around, completes that block for the running back to be able to get by. Overall, good play. A couple things like this guy should have tried to keep him inside a little more and not let him shed the block. But I think that shows good defensive line play. And then the offensive line is able to respond to that, do what needs to be done to still let that running back get through. Then once again, good block shedding up here. So all around, hard fought play. Still got some good yardage. Kind of a nice one to start us off on, I think. This next one, not quite as big of a run, but another good one. He probably gets, I don't know, right about 8-9 yards. Now let's take a look at this one. So the thing I notice here, not many gaps. The running or the linebackers up here, look at these two guys. They do a really good job. They start moving back into coverage, realize it's a run play, and immediately move up and start blocking that gap. So they do a good job of that. This guy does a really nice job. It's a kind of a stunt play where he moves from the right side of the line all the way over and blocks that guy. there's this tiny gap right here, and the running back does a really good job of squeezing through it without losing momentum and getting upfield. And the guy who makes the tackle is this block here. So this is one of the things I wanted to point out here. This is, I believe, AJ Logan making this block, and he does a good job of getting to the blocker, but really doesn't do a very good job of holding that guy down, and his guy ends up getting the block, or sorry, getting the tackle. So if the wide receivers had just blocked a little bit better here, this play could have broken, I mean, possibly for a touchdown, but could have broken out further. Because this guy has a good block. You can see he's actually throwing him to the ground. So that wide receiver does a great job blocking. I believe this is AJ Logan here who kind of misses his block a little bit. But if he had held this guy and this guy continues to throw that guy to the ground like he does, I mean, we have a wide open lane out to the outside here. So some opportunities there on the wide receiver blocking. Overall, pretty decent run play. Here's a nice one where the running back does a really good job of making a guy miss. Once again, we're not getting a lot of explosive run plays, but some good ones. Does a really good job. I mean, right here, like this is what I mean. These linebackers are doing an amazing job of getting themselves in position. As soon as they see this a run play, they all just immediately close gaps. He unfortunately, this is one of the few missed tackles that I saw all game, and I would not even put this on the linebacker. This is a great boom shifty move by the running back. We watch the running back here. He comes in, fakes the inside step, and jukes him. So this is more of a boom, nice move by the running back rather than a missed tackle. He just fakes the guy out. So good job by the running back there. Now, I put this one in the successful run play because, he does a pretty good job. He gets through the line, he gets some good yards. But the one thing I noticed when I'm watching this is like he has to fight for every yard. When we look right here, there is not a lot of gaps. There's really nowhere for him to run. He has to make those gaps and squeeze through people. And even right here, this guy should have a solid block on him and be pushing him to the outside. And he's able to easily shed that and get the tackle. They're really not the best blocking here as well. Um, I just feel like even though this technically was a successful run play, there's really not a lot of success on the line and on the blocking game. A good run by the running back, I think, and that's pretty much it. So, interesting one to look at there. So, this play, once again, a good run play. He does a good job of finding the gaps, fighting for yardage. He ends up getting the first down. But the thing that really stood out to me about this is the linebackers. Once again, the linebackers do an amazing job of getting in position. And the guy who's making that wrap up tackle on the feet is this guy right here, this linebacker. So we start to see him. He immediately sees it's a possible run and moves up. And the linebacker breaks up this gap, gets in there, and gets into position, wraps up the guy, grabs the ankles, takes him down. So once again, good play by the linebackers here. They're getting up quickly into gaps and closing those gaps and really not giving the running guy a lot of room to work with. And once again, this is the successes. Now let's look at the failures on the run plays, what I would call failures. And it's really not as much of a run failure as it is a defensive success. So it completely gets blown up here, right? Now the thing I want, this is one of the plays. This was early on in the game, and when I saw this, I was like, oh man, there's no gaps. Like he's just getting stuffed right away, right? But going back and watching this in slow mo, we do have a little bit of a gap forming here. But immediately this guy gets in there, blocks that gap, and just goes right into for a good tackle. And who is that guy? Right here. He's a linebacker. So these linebackers, look at this. I mean, both of these guys and this edge guy way over here all just rush in. Even the safeties are moving up into position. And the linebacker, it's hard to see here, but the linebacker does a really good job. He runs up, runs into a blocker, and sheds that. Right here, you can see him getting around the blocker to make that tackle. So, really great play by the linebackers. You know, they're stuffing everything out there. Here's a really great one by the edge. The edge is able to shed a block here. Once again, looks like he's just getting stuffed. But let's see what goes on here. So, one thing I did notice is this defensive play caller, they're calling aggressive this year. We can see we have what, like 5 guys not on the line. There's like 3 guys I think on the line. This guy might be on the line. It's hard to tell. But basically we have a whole bunch of people right there in the box. And almost all of them move up. And then we have this safety back here who also crashes up. So we just have, I mean, a lot of guys moving into stuff gaps. So anything that is made is getting completely destroyed. And it's hard for me to tell if it's this guy or this guy that's getting through to make this tackle. But man, really good job of getting into that gap and stuffing it. We were able to juke him and get to the outside. It could have been a pretty good run play though. But once again, we're seeing, this is what I mean by overall I saw really good tackling. Yeah, there were a couple of those few, little tiny few not as good ones, but overall, like, we're seeing a full wrap up and bringing him to the ground, doing a good job, and that's what it looked like on a lot of the plays. There really weren't many missed tackles. So this one to me is very impressive. Once again, just watching it in full time, it just looks like a stuffed run play. It looks like 3 guys get in there and the line's not doing their job and all that, right? And let's dissect this a little bit more. So first, let's look at the line. There is one guy right there in the middle who lets his guy right through, and he starts moving upfield to the second level. I think this might be by play design because he doesn't try very hard. He's more concerned with moving up. But I think his job is to basically block that guy for a split second and then let him through and get up. And I think the idea here is that the running back's going to be past him by that point, and he's not going to be able to really do too much. But he lets him through a little too early. Now let's look at where we're actually other than that guy. Because honestly, that guy, even though he does get through, if we really watch, he's behind the running back and he doesn't really get the tackle. He's just tripping over this guy. So, I don't even think he really made the impact. I think it was these two guys right here, right? So let's see what happens over there. Well, we have an amazing stunt done by the defensive line. So this guy is on the inside. You'll see this guy on the outside blocks inwards on a slant, and this guy on the inside jumps to the outside. So they switch spots right there. And that gets this guy wide open to get in, and he gets first contact on him. He's a little bit late too. And that's the guy that trips up the guy from the inside. And finally, this guy ends up making the full tackle and wrapping him up and bringing him down. So where's that guy coming from, right? Well, that is the safety starting way up top. And this to me was very impressive. So this safety starts up. He starts to as we have this guy moving over in a motion, they switch assignments and he starts to move down. And this guy who was on the guy in motion moves up top. Right? He starts to creep up. Creep, creep, creep. And primarily because the guy he's now covering is right off the line. So he's going to get up there so he can stuff him and get close, right? And then as soon as it kicks off, he starts to see, oh, this is a run play. And this is another thing I want to point out. This wide receiver goes for a block immediately. He doesn't make it look like he's going to run a route, right? Nobody really sells the run here. We can look at all the wide receivers. This guy, this guy, this guy. All of them immediately go for blocks or this screen. There's nothing really convincing anyone that it could be a pass play. So anyone that's in coverage is now moving up except for this high safety and maybe this guy who's they're just kind of like, just in case type dudes. But this safety we've been following this whole time, which is assignments, creeps up, sees it's a run play, dodges in past him, and makes the tackle. Really, really good play by the safety. Like, this to me is very impressive. I think it shows a good knowledge of roles and a very good awareness of the field. The fact that he was, starting up top, moves all the way up, and then is in perfect position to get a loss, tackle for loss. Really great play by the safety. So I really wanted to look at that one because it's to me just really nice. Let's look again. So let's look at this one. Once again, this shows the strength of the linebackers. So, like I said, in real time, I'm like, man, they're just getting right in there. There's no gaps for them, and they're just kind of getting blown up. This is bad run plays. It's really not. It's good linebacker play once again. So we have a lot of guys in the middle, and this shows how aggressive they're being with their linebackers this year. I mean, look at how many guys are in there. We have all but these three high safeties. Um, and watch how many of them blitz and how many of them drop back into coverage. One guy, one guy drops into coverage. Out of all of those guys, everybody blitzes except for just one. And that leaves four guys in coverage protecting over the top, but it really doesn't give them much time to do anything. Um, so nice blitz here, but the guy who ends up making the tackle is this guy right here. He gets in there. This guy blocks to the outside, and I think the guy next to him blocks the dude next to him, so he's able to just cut right through that gap. Boom, gets the tackle. There's just not enough guys to block everyone, you know? Like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that leaves one guy to get through. That one guy that gets through goes up and makes a prime wrap up tackle. And the guy on the other edge is able to shed his block too and help complete it. So overall, great defensive play, you know. Um, and I will point out, if this guy hadn't gone through, if this wasn't a blitz, we do have a gap here. You know, between these two guys, there is a gap. And he kind of isn't quite able to hold him as long as I would like. But oh man, if he was able to keep him on the inside, there would be a nice gap there. But that's the thing, you know, I think part of this is good defensive line play. Part of it is offense not being quite as experienced and stuff, but yeah, good defensive play overall. Now this is one where the line does stop him. It's more on the line than the linebackers on this. The linebackers are still doing a great job of paying attention and staying in position. But the guy who blows this up is just this defensive lineman. He's just able to get past this guy, sheds the block. By shedding that block so quickly, he drives the running back to the other side, and he basically runs right into the guy being blocked on the outside and really just can't do anything. I do wish the running back had just gone ultra wide on this instead of just cutting right to the outside of the tackle, just run all the way out here, you know? Because there was space on the outside, and he just tries to kind of cut right up next to the tackle. So that's an opportunity. And speaking of that, I want to look at the same exact thing. I think this is an opportunity for all of our running backs is sometimes they just don't cut wide enough. They don't use the outside of the field as much as I feel like they should. This is a good example. So, like, we get the handoff, and right here we have a nice gap, right? And if we look, there's not really anyone up here. So, if he had just ran straight towards this ref over here and used that outside of the field and then ran up kind of towards the sideline a little bit more, I mean, I think this probably could have been a touchdown. But instead, what does he do? He kind of just turns up field right away. And by doing that, he runs right into the blockers. Like even right here, he's running right in, preparing for contact at the blockers, and there's still a lane wide open towards the outside of the field. And I just think if he had cut right here and just booked it right towards that ref, I don't think these guys would have been able to catch him. And instead, he cuts right up and seeks the contact. This is just something that just feel like is a missed opportunity with the running backs mentality. We saw it last year as well. If you go back and watch some of my game review videos, it was kind of dotted here and there through every game, you know. But they're not using the outside of the field as effectively as I feel like they could. Here's another really good example of that. Now this one is a harder cut to be able to get to that outside, but I'm just showing you guys the opportunities. So really good linebacker stuff here. We've got the linebackers and all the DBs, and you'll see they all just move up, swarm as soon as they see it's a pat or a run. They all just swarm up and close every gap imaginable. So I mean, it's really hard to run through that, right? Now, let's look right here. Most of our defense is on the left side of the field. Now, right here, as the running back is getting the handoff, he hasn't even grabbed the ball yet. We have them all starting to close in, and everybody's moving to that left side of the field. Okay? And we have this wide receiver blocking inwards as well. Now, this is where I see opportunities that aren't necessarily easy to take advantage of from a running back point of view. But if they're able to see these and utilize them, we could get some much bigger plays. And I think this is something that Genty was good at, was bouncing to the outside. He would even break a tackle sometimes after that first gap and then bounce to the outside. But his big runs were almost always after he bounced to the outside. And even some of the big Dylan Riley runs last year were kind of the same way. So, like right here, like I just see such a big opportunity on the right side of the field, and he's got blockers that way. And I feel like if he saw all of these guys crowding to that left side, and instead of taking it and just trying to force his way through a line of people, if he took the ball and immediately cuts to the right, because before he even gets the ball, he's seeing all these guys starting to move up, right? Grabbing it and bouncing out to the right, this could be a pretty big play. And once again, this is not an easy thing. I'm not saying this as in like the running backs suck. They should be seeing this and doing this. I'm just saying this is a tough thing to see in the moment. But if the running backs are able to start analyzing this stuff quickly and realizing this, it enables, like right here, he cuts to the left right into everyone. And if instead he cuts to the right and bounces outside, there's an opportunity there. You Um, and I mean, just from this lineup before the ball's even snapped, you should kind of be able to see like bouncing to the left is going to be a worse option than bouncing to the right. If I'm going outside, like bouncing to the left outside is a worse option because there's just more guys to beat over there. So, like, as soon as I snap the play and I start seeing these guys moving up, like I would try to teach these running backs, like, okay, your mind should immediately trigger right here. Boom, get away from from all that gap closing and find the open space of the field. Once again, not easy, especially at full. I mean, this is slowed down and really picking it apart. But at full speed, it's a little harder to pick all that stuff up. You know what I'm saying? Especially in the heat of battle. But if we watch this even at full time and we watch this side of the field, look at how good the blocks are and how easy of a outside run this. So just an opportunity there. This might even be once again alternative plays. Run this play a couple times through a quarter, and then run a counter play that looks exactly the same, but the running back just immediately bounces out and does a little counter. Um, so maybe some opportunities for alternative plays and stuff like that to create some deception. And here's my last example of kind of a similar thing. Seeking gap or seeking contact instead of seeking gaps. When we look at this, slow it down a little bit, we can see right here, there's a really nice gap out to the outside. This guy's running up to try to get a block. Like, yeah, there's still guys here that can get the tackle, right? But there is a gap that he can use to get a few more yards. And he doesn't really use that. Like right here, he could be cutting to the outside and kind of seeking open space. And instead, he cuts in and seeks that contact. So instead of seeking contact like that, he could be seeking open space. And this is, like I said, I saw this all last year. There were some prime examples of it. I want to say in the Fresno game, I think, where it's like wide open gaps right next to him. And he just runs into the backs of guys instead of following that open space. But as a running back, finding the open space is a big part of it. But you can see he cuts inside and cuts into the contact, when I would argue he should be cutting more towards the outside. I'm not saying that would have resulted in a touchdown or anything like that, but I think it might have been able to get him a few more yards. We can see this guy is coming in as well. Line doesn't do a great job of blocking him, but overall, just following the open space instead of seeking contact. There are times where you want to seek contact, right? But when there's a big gap and you're seeking contact instead of hitting the gap, to me, that's not necessarily the time. Um, and once again, this is slowed down, and it also looks a little different from his point of view when he's running. So I'm not criticizing him too much on this. I'm just saying it's been a consistent opportunity where I've seen some spots where, a play that gets busted could have gotten us a little bit more if they had followed the open space. It's just something I wanted to point out. But I think all of those are some really good opportunities going into this next year. The defense to me looks really good. You can see the linebackers are closing gaps fast. And the defensive line is doing a really good job of shedding blocks. Part of that might be the inexperience of the offensive line. Um, but I think part of it is just the defense is more experienced and doing a good job overall. Even some of those defensive tackles, I think that are replacing somebody like Braxton Feely who held it down last year. Um, they're not super experienced, they're a little more inexperienced too, and they're doing a really good job of shedding blocks as well. So I think overall, defense up front, the line and the linebackers doing a killer job at especially run stopping. And then on the offensive side, we need to create more gaps through the offensive line. The more gaps, the better. And those running backs need to seek open space. Like, yeah, there's times where you need to seek contact, but seek open space first. And then when you need to break a tackle, there's that one guy to make miss. Either juke him or just bust right through him and seek that contact. But that's pretty much my breakdown of the spring game. A lot of successes, a lot of strengths that I'm seeing, and also some opportunities. But hit me down in the comments. Let me know what you guys took away from the spring game. What kinds of things are you guys a little bit scared of? What kinds of things are you guys liking from this team? And how do you guys feel going into this season?